So obviously, if it sells for the lower end of your estimates, there's very little in it.
Yeah. I don't see it as a money maker selling it.
So Mike Brown is coming to face the Angels for funding for a former bank building in Stoke. What you're about to see is Mike Brown pitching for funding on the hit Sky TV show Property Elevator, which shows on Sky Channel 192. He's pitching for funding to property angels John Howard, Helen Chorley, Paul Mahoney, Nicholas Wallwork, and myself, Ranjan Bhattacharya. There are plenty more pitches like this, so make sure you kind of have a watch of all of them. They're great learning. We've got links to some of them in the description below. And guess what? Property Elevator is back for a third series. And if you fancy your chances at pitching for funding for your next property project, I've put a link in the description below. It's on the screen as well. Register your details and I'll notify you as soon as we start filming so you can apply to be on the show. So let's hand over to the show's presenter, Elizabeth Warburton, as she meets Mike Brown.
Mike, welcome to Property Elevator. It's lovely having you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the deal then you've brought today.
My deal is a former bank in Stoke-on-Trent. I have planning permission to convert it into 9 flats.
Lovely.
The deal is actually looking at financing the conversion costs.
Okay, so you're looking for someone to back the whole 100%?
Or a short-term
loan
loan of money.
Okay, lovely. Well, best of luck.
Mike is coming in. He has purchased, I think, this bank in Stoke. Unfortunately, there's no money left in it by the looks of things. It looks like the safe is empty. Shall we see what Mike's got to say? Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for coming to see us today. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you brought for us to fund.
Well, I'm Mike Brown. I'm in my 60s. I'm an engineer by background. I sort of got into property as an accident probably 10, 15 years ago, and I had a couple of properties, and that's been it pretty much until recently. I went to an auction and I bought a property, and that's why I'm here today to discuss that. I've always worked full time. I had my own business in the noughties. I sold up after about 10 years, and I had a sum of money as a result of that. I then bought a flat which my daughter lived in while she was at university. The long and the short of it was then I had some spare money in 2018, and I went to some auctions, and then I came across the bank in Stoke-on-Trent and fell in love with it. I applied for planning permission to convert it into flats. So I had an architect draw up some plans, and despite it being in a conservation area, we did get planning permission to convert into 9 flats.
Yep.
I was expecting maybe 200,000 sort of conversion costs. Actually, I think the lowest was 340 and the highest was over 500,000. Property values in that area are not that high. However, the 340 option does make it a goer, I think.
And in terms of the money you've put in, you've obviously bought it. Did you buy it cash or did you?
Yes, so I bought it with cash.
Okay.
Typically, people in Guildford are renting from private landlords.
Yes.
However, the university, like other universities in the country, has recognised this and is building lots of its own properties.
Yeah, student accommodation, yeah.
And of course, not many students are now going to university because of the coronavirus, so they're studying from home and things like that. So it's not a good time to be selling a flat. So I've decided to keep that flat for the moment.
I think that's probably very wise.
Wait a year or two.
Yeah.
Just briefly describe what a 1-bed looks like for us there, please, in terms of...
So if you imagine the bank, it's on 4 floors. First floor is the grand sort of entrance, so quite high ceilings.
The banking hall, in other words.
The banking hall,
yeah.
Yes. And that's got the most constraints because it's got the strong room in it. And so there are just 2 flats in the downstairs. They are the bigger flats. So there's a 2-bedroom there, and there's a 1-bedroom, but with a separate lounge and kitchen diner as well.
What size are they?
50 square metres. The downstairs ones are larger. Yeah,
The
the
ground floor will
ones.
probably be about, I'd guess, if the whole building's 5,000 square feet, the ground floor is probably 1,500 square feet, so they'll be quite good size.
So they're more like 600 or 700 square feet, I think. So the quotes include replacing all the windows on the first, second and the top floor. They are fairly expensive, but it's in that style because it is in a conservation area. The ground floor is secondary double glazing.
So what's going on here is this is a bank building. It's in a conservation area, and a lot of bank buildings are quite ornate and quite beautiful. And it can be quite expensive to renovate those sort of attractive buildings. And what puts a dampener on all of this stuff is if the area is low value. It's fine refurbishing these sort of things in high value areas when the values support spending a lot of money on the fit out. And this is a very interesting dilemma, actually, with the planning system, because Mike mentioned he's got full planning for 9 flats, and he's got it. And what tends to happen is that in low value areas, the areas are a little bit more desolate. So the planning authorities are desperate to have people just do something with the properties, quite frankly, because there's tumbleweed in some of these high street type locations. So they're very, very keen to encourage some activity, and they're far more easier, should I say, to get planning permission through. In higher value areas, you tend to find the opposite's the case. The higher value areas are pretty much thriving anyway, and I think they just begrudge the fact that the developer may make some money out of it, and it tends to be a lot harder to get this sort of planning scheme through in higher value areas. So it's a massive little balancing act depending on where you are in the country.
It's going to be added.
Is it listed itself?
No.
It's not? Okay, interesting. Is there the opportunity to segregate off a separate lounge? And what I'm thinking is, can these 1-beds be used as 2-bed apartments? You know, is it big enough to have a 15 to 20 square metre?
It's quite difficult because there are some pretty solid walls in there.
Yeah.
So what's going on here is that there's been some questioning about the sizes of the flats. And I see where Nicholas is going with this, because what he's thinking is there an opportunity to basically change the layouts and make the flat slightly smaller? Now, the thing is that when you are in former commercial premises such as banks, the flats don't need to be that big. Generally speaking, people who live above commercial premises, the market is much more for smaller units than it is for larger units. So there is some scope to optimize the layout. The problem we've got is that in old buildings, particularly ornate old buildings like this old bank, you're stuck with load-bearing walls, you're stuck with structural walls, internal structural walls where the Victorians put them. And you can remove them, of course you can. And if you're down south in Chelsea or something, you just put in some steel and you do those sort of renovation works. But in lower value areas, you don't want to do that sort of structural modification because it simply ain't worth it. The end value of the flat, what you're going to end up with is the cost to build each flat will actually be more than the value of the end value of the flats that you're creating. And that is where all this line of investigation is going.
And we're actually constrained by the walls rather than... yeah.
Okay.
That's the difficulty working with an existing building, isn't it? You've got to work with what you've got, and there's so many beautiful features, as we can see, that it would be a shame to, or it'd be nice to keep as much of that as possible.
I've previously had properties that have been quite expensive, if you like, and rented out to just a couple of tenants. And I've always felt there's a higher risk with that. I quite like the idea of having 9 smaller properties, and if I get one bad tenant, then there's less risk in terms of income.
And is your plan with this to keep hold of these and have it as rental income?
At the moment. The state of play isn't great in the rental.
Fluid, I think the word is fluid. You're fluid.
Yes.
You're fluid, Mike.
You own it cash, 340 to 500 to do the conversion, hopefully the lower end of that.
Yes, what I would say is I do have a listed building that we live in, and I have put 90,000 aside for development work on that, which we're going to do next year. So I could borrow that. And so I'm only actually after possibly 250, unless your interest rates are so good. No,
right.
But 250 it would be sufficient.
So you've got here 470, including
that's what I've already
the
paid.
Purchase cost.
So I've got 90 already tucked away.
But the 470 is what you expect it to cost in total, is that right?
That's
including your initial purchase.
Yes.
So obviously, if it sells for the lower end of your estimates, there's very little in it.
Yeah, I don't see it as a money maker selling it. and I'm looking really to rent it.
All right. Well, we're looking for money makers. So I
thought
suppose
it was
my next question is, what do you want from us?
Right. I thought it was also there was an option of providing short-term finance.
I think the idea is ideally that there is an exit strategy, and of course there could be one here if you said, well, you have it equally or whatever, put some money up and so on. So I think let's just park that for the moment. Let's just see what Ranjan thinks of it as well, and me, and then we can talk round what you're saying.
I love bank buildings, done a few of these. I got really excited when I saw Stoke. I thought it might be Stoke Newington, but then I saw it was Stoke-on-Trent, which is a little bit further north.
Not too far for you, Ranjan.
than an area I'm more familiar with. I'm always get scared of low-value areas, and I start to look at the cost of the flat as being not that much more than the cost of actually sort of doing the conversion works. You mentioned you pull these comparables off a BBC website. So they're probably comparables, I guess, of 1 and 2 bedroom flats which are in adjacent residential streets as opposed to in a high street without much action. They would command a bit of a discount. Would that be fair to say?
I think that as a flats go, offers a lot more than more conventional blocks that typically have high service charges and that sort of thing.
Whoever maintains if you're keeping it and you want to keep it as rental, the exit is by revaluation. So the value of the end flats is important to exit out the investors and keep it as a rental.
Yes.
So the value of those flats is important. And if you are keeping the freehold and managing it, older buildings will cost a lot more to generally upkeep.
Yes.
Because all those lovely turrets and things, they cost money when you get birds nesting up there and all the rest of it, and you've got to deal with, which you don't have to deal with on modern buildings. What frightens me... So, summary there, if you're doing converting of commercial buildings to residential use, you intend to keep them, try to do it in buildings which are relatively new. Because basically, you'll get your rental income, and you've got to maintain the fabric of the building. If it's a newer building, it'll cost you a lot less to maintain than an older building, and therefore your returns will be higher. Is the build cost. The cheapest cost, in my experience, when you get these tenders, is that they tend to go upward. They tend to go in cheap to kind of get the deal, or to get the contract, and then you get this extra and that extra, and it soon magnifies. So I'd be scared of that.
Right.
So for that reason, it's probably not for me. But I will share one tip with you, because I've done a few of these banks. I hope you've probably still got time to make a claim for capital allowances, because they're embedded with capital allowances. We can chip in on the purchase price, which might be something you want to Google, because all those vaults and things massively lessen the purchase price when you claim that back.
Right.
So we'll do some videos on this later on, but this is a subject in its own right. All commercial buildings have capital allowances pretty much. And so these are things that are embedded in the building. So for example, if you imagine that you could pick up a building and turn it upside down and shake it, everything that falls out, like furniture and all of that, is not part of the fabric of the building. But anything that stays in the building when you shake it, if you like, is embedded in the building, and you can claim capital allowances for those. So if it's a restaurant, for example, all the extraction systems are, you can claim for the value of that as part of capital allowances. If it's an office building, then any air conditioning systems would be built in. Any fire alarm systems would be built in. If it's a bank building, then in bank buildings, you've got the vaults. The vaults have been put in. You also have cash lifts, because if there's a multi-floor building that have a special lift that would take people who put bags of cash in to transport them between floors. So those things are embedded in the building. And at the time of purchase, you can basically hire an accountant who's specialist in capital allowances to claim some of that back, if you like, from the taxman. So you don't actually get the money up front, if you like. What if the embedded capital in a property is valued, say, at £50,000, then you will get a tax deduction off your future profits of your business, which you can claim against. And that's something, it's very, very surprising that many people don't actually claim their capital allowances when they pick up commercial properties. That's something you must do.
Okay.
So you might have just made yourself a bit of money today.
Have you looked at just sticking it back in the auctions? You've got planning on it now.
Oh, yes.
You looked at that
yes, you know, part of it is I have fallen in love with the building.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm not necessarily doing it for
Mike,
the money.
let me tell you something. Sorry to jump in. Do never fall in love. Only person to fall in love with is your wife. Do not fall in love with a building. Because all that'll do is disappoint you over the years. This is business. If you come in here, you want money offers. I don't want to hear, and no one else does probably, that you fall in love with it, because you'll make personal decisions instead of business decisions. In retrospect, would you have bought that at auction now?
Yeah, I think so.
You are. You're happy with your purchase?
Yes.
Okay. It isn't for me because there's not enough money in it.
Yep.
However, I might have some good news for you. If one of these other guys around here doesn't want to invest in it, the government are making grants available in these types of town centres. And it may be, just maybe, and I'm not guaranteeing anything, but it may be, if you look into that via your local authority, you might find there possibly could be some grants available to convert it into residential. And you need some help. Because with due respect, I don't believe you'll get it done for 340, 350. I think it'll be more like the upper end in the end. And when you've got one builder at 150 grand less than another, I'm always very suspicious. It isn't for me, and I do wish you all the very best. But if these other guys aren't interested, please do look into a potential of grants in towns and city centres. The government have made, I think, £1 billion available for that.
John's absolutely spot on. Basically, if you're in a low value area, the government recognises that a lot of these commercial buildings are uneconomic to convert. So there are grants available. You're not going to get them in Ealing or somewhere like that because the values are there. You'll make a profit as a developer. So that's something to look at. It can turn a deal in a low value area into a viable deal. But that's subject to getting the grants. And that's something you should do the research on, ideally before buying the property.
That's a good tip, thank you.
Helen?
I can completely see why you've fallen in love with the building. A friend of mine did one of these in Bristol, and it was a good job I wasn't invested actually, because I fell in love with the building and followed this much more avidly than perhaps I should.
Listen, guys, all this talk about love, let me tell you my view on love as it comes to property. Don't fall in love with buildings, fall in love with the spreadsheet. That's what you should fall in love with, the numbers. It's the numbers of the deal that make it attractive and make it a winner.
Should have done, but I wasn't invested, so that was all fine. So I get it completely. John is right, though, that you would need to be careful that compromises or can compromise some of your decisions. I agree with what the guys have said also on the cost of this, and I would certainly, I'd have the 500 in your mind from the start. I really would. And you know, the numbers, even when we're looking at the lower end of 340, if the values come in at the lower end that you've given here, that's a gross profit there of 45k, so it's a 9% return on GDV. That's very, very tight at the best of times. That's tight in a rising market. If costs do come in nearer the 500, that wipes out your lowest and your medium. It wipes out all your profit in both of those scenarios. So you really do need to achieve your high end kind of prices, which I don't know how realistic that is. It is tight on the
Okay, let me just paraphrase that. It's a money pit.
numbers. It's normally the type of projects that I would be involved with, but the numbers just are very tight on this. I prefer to do these type of projects with somebody that's done it before, so they know the things that catch you out. So it's beautiful. I think you're going to end up with, you know, beautiful project and beautiful flats at the end of it, but you're going to have to be really, really tight on those costs and manage that exceptionally well.
And of course you are able to fund it because you own the building, so you should be able to fund it with a bank.
Is that something you've looked at all, Mike?
I haven't looked at getting a bank to loan on that yet, no, because I assume it's
The fact that you own it, cash,
yes,
quite often a lender will give you all of the build cost. What might restrict you in this case is that the build cost is substantially greater than the value of the asset, and that's not usually the case. But you would be able to borrow something, almost definitely, to contribute toward getting it done. I would have thought it's a newly converted bank on the high street that probably, and I don't know this for sure, and therefore I can't really take an educated guess on it, but I would have thought it would be toward the upper end of 1 and 2 bedroom flats in Tunstall, because they're newly converted and it's in a nice looking building and obviously a decent location being the high street. But I don't know that because I don't know the area in depth. But you should, because you own them.
yes.
So some stronger comparables may have changed it. But again, I suppose just out of interest, Mike, what were you looking for from the Angels today?
Potentially some short-term finance for, say, 6 months, or potentially a share of the development and then the final. But I do appreciate the second option is perhaps a little bit more difficult to organise and to...
Yeah, I think for me, similar to what Helen mentioned, the margin's just a bit thin for it to work. I think on both options, for me personally.
I think since we're on relationship advice, there's a very thin line between love and hate. And I think this could soon turn into hate when you get into this project. I noticed the auction board is in a northern auction. You know, quite frankly, for some reason or other, commercial to residential conversions are massively popular right now. They are actually, and if you're interested, of course, I do a regular set of webinars on this. I'll put the link in the description below and on the screen. Come and join our next one, tell you all about it. It's a 90-minute webinar. Stick this in a London auction, get out and do a better deal.
Get it sold.
This isn't a money maker, and the love you have for it will turn into hate in no time at all. That's absolutely, I stand by that. And have you noticed, I mean, if you've been to a London auction, you know, you'll see all these lots for sale and they're all based in the southeast. And then you'll get the odd lot that's stuck out in Liverpool. And there's a tactical reason why they do that. Because psychologically, you're looking at these, in a London auction, you're looking at these flats for £300,000-400,000 and lot after lot that comes up. And you tend to find that these lots up north, they're at the end of the catalogue. And there's a reason for that. Because people may have come in for lot number 10, which is a 2-bedroom flat in Ealing. And they were quite happy to spend 300 grand on it. And they didn't get it. You know, they were unfortunate in not securing anything at the sale. And at the back of the catalogue, there's this cheap tiddler in Blackpool or something. And so many people impulsively think, because they've psychologically seen so many expensive lots at the beginning of the sale, they psychologically think that it is cheap. And I've seen it time and time again, that you take a lot that was sold at auction, at a northern auction, and you put that same lot a few months later in a London auction, and it attracts a different market, a different range of bidders, and often a higher price. So the advice here is just trade it and get out.
Divorce involved at some point.
You don't say that.
God forbid, that's even more expensive.
Were there any contentious planning conditions, you know, precluding any future permitted development or any parking requirement, anything like that? Is there any parking with it actually?
No. It is the high street, and that's why the high street's dying there, because there is no parking.
Are we ready to show our hands?
I think most of us have showed ours. I think it's just.
I think so.
I think it's just unique.
I mean, where I'm at, I actually think there's an opportunity to make some money by tweaking the layout. That's a big potential because I've not seen your floor plans.
Right.
But I think I might be able to add some value and get you to the top end of that valuation.
Interesting.
With some interesting tweaks to the floor plan. I actually would concur with the other guys. I think the best thing would be to prep it for auction, having done that work, having done your comparables, and selling it on. But you need some expertise to get you to that auction stage to prepare it. So I'm not sure what I'm offering you, but I'm offering to work with you for a share of any profit over your minimum number. I guess my offer is my time to get you prepared for a resale, as long as that takes, maybe some planning tweaks to add the value, and then put it into sale.
Whatever Mike paid for it, anything over and above that figure, when you resell it together,
Yeah,
you will go.
we would go 50-50 on that, having created more value through tweaking what you've got there with
at no
planning
cost
and
to you.
presentation.
Nicholas, you pulled a goddamn blinder. I mean, he sat there, lurking in the corner there, listening to what everyone said. I lobbed in this idea saying, look, you know, the flats were obviously too big. There's plenty of scope for rejigging the layout. Of course there is. And I said, bung it in a London auction. And Nicholas is quietly thinking what to do. And I don't know why I didn't think of it, quite frankly. It's so obvious. I gave the idea. I said, bung it in a London auction. I could have made the same offer, but I just didn't think of it at the time. With hindsight, Nicholas has pulled a blinder. He's pulled it all together. He's taking no financial risk whatsoever. He's using his expertise. Simply, you know, and I could have done this, put my own planning consultant in, got the layout rejigged, and got it listed at the London auction. It would have sold for a better profit and would have gone 50-50. It's just thinking of the idea. And this is the thing with property, really. You know, the possibilities of what you can do with stuff is limitless. It's all about what you can think of and how creative you can be. And in this case, Nicholas has pulled an absolute blinder.
And no cost to you.
This is
Without building it.
And without building
Just reworking the planning.
Yes.
Maximising the value and sharing that profit.
It's a little bit like going to marriage counselling rather than a divorce.
Part of today was also to get your views on this, because I'm very new to this game.
Okay, well, you've had a
I-
lot of
I
advice
do
in a very
appreciate
short
that. I've
period
had
of
a lot
time
of-
today.
a lot
I
of
know it takes
advice.
a bit of...
Yes, so I do appreciate your views, even though they weren't necessarily positive for me, but they, you know.
Well, they are positive, Mike. They're very positive.
Yes.
You know, I can also help with the funding in terms of getting the right land and development owned funding, and I can top that up if needed. You've got some money to top it up. So I think funding, if we want to build it, it can be built. Just whether it should be built or not, if it's going to make any money.
Yep.
Or if it's just maximising what we've already got. Bit of time from me. You've got the asset already. Let's just try and
Nicholas,
maximise the sale.
What you really need to know, presumably, is what Mike paid for it, so you can then decide whether or not it's worth
I paid
doing.
110 for it.
So we could share any uplift from 110, having reworked the planning.
Yep.
And maximise the potential uplift from now.
Yes.
So if you look at the returns here, he's paid 110 for it. I would estimate that with a bit of rejigging of planning and all of that, you'd probably get between 140 and 150 grand. So that's an uplift of potentially 40 grand split between two. So that's £20,000 uplift. What is Nicholas putting down? I would estimate it'll be about 10 hours of his time and maybe £1,500 to £2,000 worth of planning consultant fees. So not a bad return of investment there. Well done.
Would you like to know more about me?
Yeah, is that...
Do you know what?
Is that now, or is this for discussion later?
No, that's an offer.
You need an answer.
Need an answer
I
now.
have to make a
That's
decision.
how it goes, yep.
The deal is we work together, put it in the auction, whatever the cost, whatever we get net from the auction, after the auction costs,
Yep.
we take 110, I get 110.
You get the first 110 out.
And then the rest of it we split between us.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Well done.
Fantastic.
That's a great deal.
Virtual handshake.
You can see my slow hand clap there. Very pissed off that I didn't think of that one. But maybe next time. Keep watching, guys. Bye for now.
So, Mike, we got a deal.
Yes, it went very well.
Congratulations. I was
Thank you.
trying to listen in. I could hear a lot of negotiation going on.
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
I was asking initially for finance, but to a certain extent, really, what I was looking to do is to run it past them and the experts and get their view on how good they felt the project was.
The deal was, right,
Yes.
okay.
I think realistically they've suggested that it isn't as good as I maybe believed. Maybe I'd fallen in love with the building too much.
Okay, so there's a little bit of an emotional investment in there as well.
I think so. But Nicholas was quite keen that we work together and maybe look at a an exit strategy for me to actually sell the property, and then we'll share any additional profit that's made out of it.
Okay, excellent. So how do you feel about that? Are you happy?
Yes, no, I'm happy. Yes,
Good.
It's gone well.
Good.
Thank
And
you.
then you get the experience that Nick has as well. So
Yes, certainly.
really good deal. Congratulations.
Thank